Today's World War II read aloud is the harmonica, and it is inspired by a true story. I'm actually going to read you the author's note first. The harmonica was inspired by a true story. Heinrich Rosmarin grew up in Czezlazad, Poland. In 1939, the Germans invaded his homeland. Heinrich was taken to Desterfurt, which was a concentration camp, where, with the help of the harmonica that his father had taught him to play, he survived the hardships and sorrow of that prison. We know that sadly during World War II, many people, especially Jewish people, were put by Nazis in concentration camps with horrible conditions where sadly millions did not survive. We're going to learn of the story of this boy who was a survivor. And it says, after the war, he came to the United States and changed his name to Henry Rosmarin. Again, with the aid of his harmonica, he shared his wartime experiences with others, especially teenagers, in the hopes that they might bring about a better future. Although he died in 2001, his is an ongoing story of the power of music and the strength of the human heart. So we're about to hear a story, but a few questions I want you to listen for as we read are the following. Number one, how did the boy and his family escape from the war and try to remain normal as they could be during wartime? Does this remind you of characters in Number the Stars? Number two, what hardships do the boy and the other prisoners face in the concentration camps? And number three, how does the meaning of the harmonica change for the boy throughout the story? So without further ado, here is The Harmonica by Tony Johnston. I cannot remember my father's face or my mother's, but I remember their love and warmth enfolding me as a song. Singing was like breathing to us for a time. For a time, the only music in our house was our own voices. My father's, my mother's, and mine, so off key, we could crack cockery. And here's the family singing together. It does look a little bleak, but you can see they're smiling, they're having fun together as a family. The melodies of Schubert soared into our home, freed from the neighbor's gramophone, which is a way they played music back then. Nowadays, you just listen on your computer, but back then they'd have a gramophone, which is like even more, even before a record player. We sang and we listened to the gramophone's sweet notes, and we lived our lives. I had dreams of music. And you see the happy family there. A piano was my heart's desire, a piano for playing Schubert. But like the composer, we were poor as pigeons. Even so, one evening, dusted with coal from the mine where he worked, my father came home and slipped a silvery gift into my hand, a harmonica. On it were his charry fingerprints. So that was all his father could give him, and he worked very hard to make it such. Are you noticing that the harmonica was very important to the boy in the beginning because it was a gift? It represented his father's sacrifices and his love for him. My lips loved the harmonica, cool as water. At first, my breath panted in and out of its niche sides like bellows. I was so eager. Gently, said my father, a smile in his voice, or you will simply blast it apart. I don't know if you've ever played the harmonica, but it's not easy, right? You have to blow into it gently. I wheezed and blew until somewhere in the heart of the harmonica, my mouth found Schubert. Then my mother and father danced together, waltzed over our bare floor. Somewhere outside, a war was raging, but it was far away, a bad dream, leaving us untouched. So here's the family dancing. That's how they could escape some of the hardships of the war. I played the harmonica while my parents danced. In our dream, we believed the world to be good, until there in the heart of Poland, Nazi soldiers found us. We were Jews, enough for them to take my mother and father from me. Like the length of a kindling, in one stroke, they split our family. So he got separated from his parents. I was sent to a concentration camp, swallowed dreams and all, down the dark Nazi throat. Barefoot, I labored alongside others, all of us, dull-eyed bags of bones, digging a road through snow. With each shovelful of frozen earth, I thought of my mother and father. Were they still alive? I wondered. So you can see here, the soldiers are supervising while he and the other prisoners are working. And if you can see, their clothing looks like just, plain cotton clothes, not very much, but they're outside in the snow. So it's really horrible. Often, to keep from losing hope, I touched the harmonica, cold inside my pocket. Sometimes I played it to keep from losing hope. I wept when I thought of my father and my mother. I woke jolted from my sleep, and I knew my parents were dead. Then I played Schubert, played and played while my heart reeled. So here he was using that harmonica to cope. He just had a bad feeling, and he was totally alone, but he had his music to keep him strong. The commandant of the camp loved Schubert. By some terrible miracle, he heard of me and sniffed me out. So he liked that special composer, and he heard the boy could play. One night he spat. "Play, Jew." I stood before him, my hands numb with winter. What if I fumbled? What if I ran out of breath? What if the notes rushed from my head? Inside I trembled like a hare crouched in the bush. I had no doubt if I faltered, I would be dead. So he's asked to play for the soldier and terrified of what he might do. I remembered what my father had told me of Schubert, how he had lived in a bare room with no fire. Though his fingers ached with cold, he wrote his music. Though he ached, he could not stop creating beauty. Though I ached, each night I, skin and bone, played for the commandant. He listened enthralled. Each night when I was done, he tossed me bread. He worked us, beat us, for no reason, without mercy. Yet he recognized beauty. I could not imagine how that could be. So they both loved this music, even though this man was completely evil and brutal to his prisoners. I felt sick, black inside, playing music for the commandant who wore ugliness and death upon his shoulders like epaulets. I felt sick getting bread while others starved to death. I despised myself for every note, every harmonica breath, until one day a whisper grazed my ear. "Bless you." "For what?" I asked the dark. "Schubert." I slipped that into my pocket. Each night, like the very stars, my notes had reached other prisoners. So you can see him in the bunks there, and in this horrible prison, at least they could hear this boy's beautiful music, and that was bringing them hope. "Play, Jew," spat the commandant night after night. Night after night, I touched the harmonica to my lips. I thought of my father, who had given it to me, of my mother, who once had danced, and of the prisoners without hope, who might hear the notes and be lifted like the flights of birds. I played for them with all my heart. The end. So I hope you are inspired by the beautiful story of courage. Again, even in a time of such darkness and hardship, there are brave people who made a positive difference.